All right, let's talk about one of the most important parts of nursing research, data interpretation. This is where the magic really happens. It's how we turn all those numbers and observations into real-world actions that can actually make a patient's life better. So, let's get right into it. Nursing research is constantly churning out just tons of powerful, insightful data. But the goal isn't just to get something published. The whole point is to find evidence that helps us at the bedside, to improve patient care and get better results. The thing is, that data doesn't just speak for itself. So after all the analysis is done, a researcher might be staring at something that looks, well, like this, a bunch of symbols and numbers. Now, these stats are telling us that the result is significant, and what that really means is it's probably not a random fluke. But, just look at it. It's abstract, it's complex. And that brings us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? What does any of this actually mean for a real person lying in a hospital bed? How do we get from that screen of numbers to something that makes a real human impact? Well, answering that question, that is the whole game. That's interpretation. This is where we have to build what our sources call the critical bridge. Think about it. We're literally creating a pathway from pure statistics over to practical clinical use. We're turning that raw data into knowledge that actually means something. So let's get on the same page. What exactly is data interpretation? Well, here's the formal definition. It's the process of making sense of what you found, figuring out what you can logically conclude, and, this is the big one, explaining why it matters. It's really a search for the deeper meaning. Now, to do this right, researchers can't just wing it. It's a systematic process. So let's look at a kind of practical checklist for how you go about decoding data the right way. First off, you have to ask, does this data actually speak to my original questions? Does it support what I thought would happen, or does it challenge it? Second, is the data itself even clean? Because, garbage in, garbage out. Third, what's the story here? What patterns or trends are popping out? And last but definitely not least, what couldn't the study do? Being honest about limitations is absolutely crucial. And now we are getting to the absolute heart of the matter in nursing research. It's this huge concept that every single person in the field has to wrestle with, the whole question of significance. And this is where it gets tricky, because significant can mean two totally different things. On the one hand, you've got statistical significance. That just tells us if an effect is probably real and not some random accident. But then, on the other hand, you have clinical significance. And that asks a much, much more important question. Is this effect big enough to actually make a difference in someone's life? This quote from our source material is the perfect example. It just nails the dilemma. You can have a new drug that, statistically, works. Look at that p-value. But if it only reduces pain by 0.3 points out of 10, is that really a win for the patient who's in serious pain? Probably not. That's the difference right there. Here's another one for you. Let's say a study finds a new way to care for wounds heals them 0.4 days faster. Statistically, that's a real effect. But now you have to ask the practical questions. Is a difference of less than half a day really worth the money and the time to retrain an entire hospital? Maybe, maybe not. That's the critical thinking that interpretation is all about. So all of this leads us to a really crucial idea. The numbers themselves are never the whole story. To do this well, you have to look beyond the spreadsheet and consider the wider context. In fact, context is everything. A huge piece of that context is what's called the theoretical framework. This is basically the lens you're using to look at the problem. It's the collection of ideas and theories that help you answer why something happened, not just what happened. It's what connects your little piece of research to the giant, ongoing story of nursing science. So a great interpreter is kind of like a detective, right? They're pulling together all these clues to build the complete picture. They're seeing how their work fits in with what other scientists have already found. They're super careful not to make huge claims based on a small or weird sample. And of course, they are ethically rock solid. No fudging the numbers to get the result you want. Even thinking about whether a graph or a table tells the story better as part of it. Okay, so we've decoded the numbers, we've put them in context, and that brings us to the final, most important step of all, taking all this hard work and actually using it to help people in the real world. So, if you only take a few things away from this, let it be these. First, interpretation is that essential bridge from a spreadsheet to someone's bedside. Second, you have to always ask if a statistically significant finding is actually clinically meaningful. Third, context is king. And finally, remember the whole point of this entire process is to find solid evidence we can use to make nursing better. Because when it's all said and done, the best interpretation doesn't just give us a neat answer. It actually pushes us to ask even better, smarter questions. It kicks off the next round of research in this amazing cycle that just keeps making patient care better and better. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. What will your research help us ask next?